Rafi lived at the edge of a small town where the road turned into fields and quiet trees, and the mornings felt slower than anywhere else. He was old and thin and careful with every step, but his eyes still looked sharp, like he noticed small things other people missed. His house was simple and a little tired, just like him, and the paint on the gate was peeling, and the garden had more weeds than flowers. People in town knew him as a man who spoke softly and smiled politely and kept his stories to himself. Some said he used to be a school worker, and some said he once fixed radios and clocks, but nobody really knew because he never tried to prove anything. Most days he woke before sunrise, made tea, sat by the window, and watched the birds hop along the fence. He liked the quiet because the quiet did not ask him questions. But quiet also felt heavy when the wind stopped and the house sounded too empty. Rafi had a small bell near the door that he rang when he came in and when he left, and he told himself it was for safety. Deep down it was also so the house would make a sound that welcomed him. That morning the sky was pale and the air was cool and the smell of damp earth floated in from the fields. Rafi put on his old sweater and stepped outside with a cloth bag in his hand because he planned to buy bread and lentils from the market. He locked the gate slowly and took his walking stick and started down the road with a steady rhythm like he had practiced it for years. A few neighbors waved and he nodded back and kept going. He did not rush because rushing made his knees complain. Near the canal the road narrowed and the grass grew taller and the trees leaned over like they wanted to listen to the water. Rafi usually avoided that path because it was uneven, but today he chose it because the main road looked muddy. He walked carefully, watching where he placed his feet, and he listened to the water trickling like a soft whisper. Then he heard another sound. It was small and thin and broken, like a cry that had no strength left. Rafi stopped and turned his head slowly because his ears were not as young, but his heart recognized trouble fast. The sound came again, and this time it was closer. It was not the sound of a bird, and not the sound of a goat, and not the sound of a child. It sounded like a tiny animal calling for help. Rafi tightened his grip on the walking stick and stepped toward the bushes beside the canal. The grass was wet and brushed against his legs, and the leaves stuck to his shoes. He pushed a branch aside and saw a small puppy shivering near a stone. The puppy was light brown and muddy, and its ribs showed too clearly for such a young body. Its eyes were wide and tired, and it tried to stand, but its legs trembled. Rafi's chest tightened as if someone had pulled a string inside him. He knelt slowly with a soft groan because his joints did not like sudden movements. The puppy looked at him and tried to bark, but only a weak sound came out. Rafi spoke gently like he spoke to birds. "Easy, little one, easy, I am here now." The puppy sniffed the air and leaned forward a little, then pulled back as if it had learned not to trust. Rafi opened his cloth bag and found the small piece of bread he had brought for himself. He broke it into tiny pieces and placed them on the ground. The puppy stared at the bread, then crawled forward and ate with quick bites. Rafi watched and felt both sadness and relief because hunger was something he could solve, at least for a moment. When the puppy finished, it lifted its head and made another weak sound, then turned its face toward the bushes. Rafi followed the direction and noticed a broken cardboard box half hidden under leaves. The box looked wet and crushed, like it had been left there after a hurried decision. Rafi leaned closer and heard soft, tiny sounds coming from inside. His heart beat harder because he already knew what he would find. He carefully pulled the box into the light and opened one side. Inside were kittens. Small and trembling and packed close like they were trying to borrow warmth from each other. Their fur was gray and white, and their eyes were barely open, and their bodies were so tiny that a strong wind could have pushed them. Rafi stared for a moment and felt his throat tighten. He thought of how easy it was for the world to forget small lives. He thought of how quiet a place could look while something suffered inside it. Rafi looked around the canal path and saw no one. Only trees and water and the long road behind him. He knew he could not leave them there. He also knew the town shelter was far, and he did not trust that they would get gentle care there. He took a deep breath and made a decision that felt heavy and simple at the same time. He took off his sweater even though the air was cold and spread it on the ground. He carefully lifted the kittens one by one and placed them in the sweater like a nest. The puppy watched with worried eyes as if it understood these were its little family now. Rafi then folded the sweater into a bundle and held it close to his chest. The kittens made tiny sounds and their warmth was weak but real. Rafi looked at the puppy and pointed softly. "Come with me, little one." The puppy hesitated, then limped forward and stayed close to his leg. The walk back felt longer because Rafi carried the bundle carefully and tried not to stumble. His arms ached, but he did not stop because stopping felt risky. He kept speaking softly to calm them and to calm himself. "Just a bit more, we will reach home." The puppy followed like a shadow, sometimes bumping into his shoe. When they reached his gate, Rafi opened it with one hand and stepped inside. The yard looked messy, but it was safe, and that mattered more than beauty. He carried the bundle into the house and placed it on the table gently. The house smelled of tea and old wood and quiet. The kittens wiggled and the puppy sniffed the floor and sneezed. Rafi closed the door and stood still for a moment, like he was listening to a new kind of sound in his home. It was the sound of breathing that was not his, it was the sound of life asking to stay. Rafi moved quickly in his slow way. He found an old basket in the corner that once held laundry. He lined it with a clean towel and another cloth and made a soft bed. He lifted the kittens and placed them inside, and they pressed together like a single small heartbeat. He filled a bowl with water and brought a small plate with crumbs of bread soaked in warm milk that he heated carefully. He did not have special food, but he had patience and warmth, and that was a start. The puppy drank water, then looked up at him with eyes that seemed to ask if this was real. Rafi crouched and touched the puppy's head softly. "You are safe here." The puppy leaned into his hand, and for the first time its body stopped shaking. Rafi sat on the chair and looked at them all. The kittens made tiny hungry sounds, and the puppy stayed near the basket like a guard. Rafi felt something inside him shift, like a door opening after being closed for too long. He remembered a time when the house had more voices. He remembered laughter at dinner and someone calling his name from another room. Those memories had been quiet for years, like photos locked in a box. Now the house had new sounds, and they were small, but they were strong enough to pull him into the present. He realized he would need help because caring for them would not be easy. He would need milk and medicine, and someone who understood animals better than he did. But he also realized he did not feel alone in the same way anymore. As the morning light moved across the floor, Rafi heard footsteps outside. Someone was walking down the road near his gate. He froze because he suddenly wondered if these animals belonged to someone. He wondered if someone had left them there on purpose. He wondered if trouble would follow them to his door. The footsteps stopped near the gate, and a voice called out, "Uncle Rafi, are you home?" Rafi recognized the voice. It was Mina, the young woman who lived 2 houses away and often helped elders carry groceries. Rafi stood and went to the door with a careful pace. Before he opened it, he looked back at the basket. The puppy had climbed close and curled beside the kittens like it had promised them something. Rafi felt a strange mix of fear and hope because he knew this moment could change everything. He opened the door and Mina smiled, then her smile faded when she saw his face. "Uncle Rafi, what happened? Are you okay?" Rafi swallowed and pointed inside. "I found them near the canal." Mina stepped in and her eyes widened when she saw the puppy and kittens. She covered her mouth for a second, as if her heart had been caught by surprise. Rafi watched her expression and waited. He did not know if she would scold him or help him or tell him to send them away. Mina slowly walked closer and knelt beside the basket. Her eyes filled with worry and tenderness at the same time. Rafi felt his own eyes burn slightly, but he held his breath. Mina looked up at him and said softly, "Uncle, we have to act fast." Then she added a sentence that made Rafi's stomach drop. "Because I think I know why they were left there." Mina looked at the puppy and kittens with careful eyes, and her face showed worry mixed with understanding. She told Rafi that a truck had passed the canal early that morning, and someone had been seen stopping for only a moment. People in town sometimes left animals where they thought nature would decide their fate. Rafi listened quietly and felt a slow heaviness in his chest because he knew that choice was not nature but fear. Mina said she could call a local helper who knew about animals, but it might take time. Rafi nodded and said time was something he was willing to give. He moved the chair closer to the basket and watched the kittens press together for warmth. The puppy stayed near them like a guard and lifted its head whenever someone moved. Mina smiled softly at that sight and said the puppy had already chosen its role. Mina went to the kitchen and cleaned her hands and returned with warm water and a cloth. She gently wiped the kittens and checked their tiny bodies with care. Rafi watched closely, trying to learn with his eyes and his heart. Mina explained that warmth mattered more than anything in the first hours. She showed Rafi how to make a small safe corner away from drafts. They moved the basket closer to the wall and added another towel. The kittens made small sounds that filled the room like fragile music. Rafi felt the house changing with every sound. The quiet that once felt heavy now felt busy in a gentle way. The puppy grew braver and explored the floor with slow steps. It sniffed the legs of the chair and the door and returned to the basket. Rafi laughed softly, and the sound surprised him. He had not laughed like that in a long time. Mina noticed and gave him a look that said this moment mattered. She asked if he had a name for the puppy yet. Rafi shook his head and said names came after trust. Mina agreed and said trust was already growing. They talked about food and care and what would come next. Mina offered to bring proper milk later, and Rafi thanked her. She also said the town helper would come by evening. Rafi nodded again and felt both hope and worry. He did not know if he could keep them all. He did not know if letting them go would hurt more. He only knew that right now they needed him. As the day moved forward, the sun warmed the room. The kittens slept in a small pile and the puppy curled beside the basket. Rafi sat nearby and watched their breathing rise and fall. Each breath felt like a promise being kept. He remembered days when promises were part of daily life. Those days had faded quietly over time. Now new promises were forming without words. A knock came at the door later in the afternoon. Mina returned with supplies and a calm smile. She brought milk and a small feeding bottle and soft cloths. Rafi helped her set everything up. They fed the kittens carefully one by one. Rafi was nervous at first, but his hands were steady. The kittens responded and their tiny mouths worked hard. Rafi felt a strange pride, as if he had passed a test. The puppy watched closely and wagged its tail for the first time. That small movement filled the room with joy. Mina laughed and said that was a good sign. She said animals knew when they were safe. Rafi believed her because he felt it too. When evening came, the helper arrived. He was a quiet man with gentle hands and kind eyes. He checked the animals and spoke calmly. He said the kittens were weak but had a chance. He said the puppy would grow strong with care. He looked at Rafi and asked if he could keep them for now. Rafi did not answer right away. He looked at the basket and then at the puppy. He felt fear and hope pulling at him together. He finally said yes with a soft voice. The helper nodded and said he would visit again. He gave advice and left quietly. The house settled into a new kind of calm. Night came and the sounds outside grew distant. Inside the house, small breaths continued. Rafi prepared a place near his chair to sleep. He did not want to be far from them. As he sat in the dim light, Rafi felt tears gather. They were not only sad tears. They were tears of release and connection. He realized that saving them had also saved a part of him. The night passed slowly with small movements and soft sounds. Rafi stayed awake, listening and learning. Before dawn, the puppy lifted its head and looked at him. Its eyes were brighter than before. Rafi reached out and touched its head gently. He whispered that they would face the next day together. Outside, the sky began to lighten. A new day was coming with unknown challenges. Rafi felt ready to meet them. Morning arrived slowly and light slipped through the small window and rested on the floor near the basket. Rafi woke from short sleep and felt stiffness in his back, but he did not complain. He looked first at the animals before he looked at anything else. The kittens were still breathing in a small steady rhythm, and the puppy lifted its head when Rafi moved. That small movement felt like a greeting. Rafi smiled and whispered good morning as if they understood every word. The house felt different now. It no longer felt like a place waiting for time to pass. It felt like a place where time mattered. Rafi heated milk carefully and tested it the way Mina had shown him. His hands shook a little, but his focus was strong. He fed the kittens slowly and patiently. Each kitten drank a little more than before. Rafi noticed their tiny bodies felt warmer. That warmth gave him hope. The puppy stayed close and watched every move. It followed Rafi from table to sink and back again. Sometimes it lost balance and sat down suddenly. Rafi laughed softly each time. That laughter felt like air entering a room that had been closed too long. Later in the morning, Mina returned. She brought fresh towels and more food. She also brought news. She said people in town were talking about the old man who saved animals. Some spoke with kindness and some with doubt. Rafi listened without reacting much. He had lived long enough to know that words passed faster than actions. Mina checked the kittens and smiled with relief. She said they were stronger than yesterday. She praised Rafi for his care. Rafi felt shy and looked down. Praise was not something he was used to receiving. Mina then asked an important question. She asked what Rafi planned to do if the animals survived. The question stayed in the air. Rafi did not answer right away. He looked at the puppy who was chewing gently on the edge of a cloth. He looked at the kittens sleeping close together. He thought about his age and his strength and his quiet days. He thought about how empty the house had been before yesterday. He finally said he did not know yet. Mina nodded and said that was an honest answer. As the day went on, Rafi noticed small changes. The puppy started responding to his voice. When Rafi spoke, the puppy looked up. When Rafi sat, the puppy sat nearby. Trust was growing without effort. In the afternoon, rain began to fall outside. The sound of rain tapped gently on the roof. Rafi closed the window and wrapped the basket with another cloth. The house felt warm and safe. The rain made the world feel smaller and closer. Rafi found an old photo album while cleaning a shelf. He had not opened it in years. Inside were pictures of his younger days. There were faces he had loved and lost. He sat quietly and looked at them while the animals slept. He felt sadness but also gratitude. Life had taken many things, but it had also given him this moment. The rain stopped near evening. The helper returned for a short check. He nodded with approval. He said the animals were improving. He said care and patience were working. Rafi felt proud in a quiet way. That night Rafi dreamed. He dreamed of walking along the canal again. This time the path was bright and clean. The animals walked beside him, strong and healthy. When he woke, his eyes were wet. He wiped them gently and smiled. Days passed slowly, but with purpose. Each day the kittens gained strength. Each day the puppy grew more playful. Rafi learned their needs and rhythms. He learned when they were hungry and when they wanted rest. He learned their small sounds and movements. People began visiting more often. Some brought supplies. Some brought advice. Some simply came to see. Rafi welcomed them politely, but guarded his quiet moments. He did not want the house to lose its calm. One afternoon, a woman arrived with serious eyes. She said she had lost animals near the canal. Rafi felt a tightness in his chest. He invited her inside. She looked at the puppy and kittens carefully. After a long moment, she shook her head. She said these were not hers. Rafi felt relief but also anger at whoever had left them. The woman left, and the house settled again. Rafi sat near the basket and spoke softly. He told the animals they were meant to be here. He told them they were not a mistake. The puppy rested its head on his foot. That simple contact filled Rafi with emotion. He realized how much he had missed being needed. He realized that caring for them had given his days meaning. Not loud meaning, but steady meaning. One evening Mina sat with him as the sun set. She asked if he had chosen names yet. Rafi smiled and said not yet. He said names should grow from stories. Mina laughed and agreed. As darkness came, the kittens slept peacefully. The puppy curled close to Rafi. Rafi felt tired but content. He felt fear sometimes about the future. But fear no longer ruled his thoughts. Rafi understood that saving them had changed him. It had opened his heart again. It had reminded him that kindness still mattered. That even late in life new chapters could begin. Outside the stars appeared one by one. Inside the house small lives rested safely. Rafi sat quietly and breathed in the moment. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. But he knew he would face it with them. The final days of waiting arrived quietly and Rafi felt them before he named them. The kittens were no longer fragile shapes pressed together, but small curious beings who opened their eyes wider each morning. Their steps were unsure but brave, and their tiny sounds filled the house with gentle energy. The puppy moved with more strength now and followed Rafi everywhere with proud steps. Rafi noticed how his own steps felt lighter even when his knees complained. He realized that his body still felt old, but his spirit felt awake. Each morning Rafi opened the door and let fresh air enter the house. The animals watched the light like it was a gift meant only for them. Rafi prepared food and cleaned their space with care. His hands moved with purpose and confidence. He no longer felt like a man passing time. He felt like a man protecting it. People from town continued to visit. Some came quietly and some spoke too much. A few brought food and blankets. Others brought questions. Rafi answered politely but kept his focus on the animals. He had learned that not every voice deserved space in the heart. One afternoon the helper returned with good news. He said the kittens were healthy and strong enough to grow without danger. He said the puppy would soon need open space and learning. He looked at Rafi with a thoughtful expression. He asked if Rafi planned to keep them all. The question felt heavy and gentle at the same time. Rafi looked around the room. He saw scratch marks on the floor and cloths folded near the basket. He saw sunlight touching the wall where silence once lived. He took a slow breath. He said he wanted to keep the puppy. He said the kittens deserved families with more energy and space. The helper nodded with respect. He said that choice showed wisdom, not loss. He promised to help find kind homes. Rafi felt relief mixed with sadness. He knew letting go would hurt. But he also knew holding too tightly could be unfair. Mina helped spread the word carefully. She chose people who showed patience and warmth. Families visited and sat quietly near the kittens. Rafi watched closely. He did not rush his trust. He waited for the kittens to choose with their small movements. One by one the kittens left. Each goodbye felt like a small tear in the heart. But each farewell also felt right. Rafi watched them leave in safe arms. He whispered wishes for long lives and gentle days. When the last kitten left, the house felt quieter again. But it was not the same quiet as before. This quiet carried memory, not emptiness. The puppy sat near Rafi and sensed the change. It rested its head on his leg. That simple weight grounded him. Rafi finally chose a name for the puppy. He called it Noor because it had brought light where shadows lived. The puppy responded to the name with joy. It wagged its tail and leaned close. Rafi smiled fully without holding back. Days turned into weeks. Noor grew stronger and more playful. Rafi took short walks with Noor each morning. People smiled when they saw them pass. Some waved and some stopped to talk. Rafi did not mind anymore. He realized the world had slowly opened to him again. Not because he chased it, but because he had answered when something small asked for help. One evening Rafi sat on his chair as the sun lowered. Noor rested at his feet. The house glowed with soft light. Rafi felt tears rise again. But this time they were full of peace. He thought about the day at the canal. He thought about how close he had been to walking past. He understood how small choices shaped large endings. Rafi whispered a quiet thanks to the moment that had stopped him. He thanked the fear that did not win. He thanked the courage that arrived quietly. As night settled, Rafi closed the door and locked it gently. He rang the small bell. This time the sound felt different. It no longer welcomed only him. It welcomed a shared life. Rafi lay down to sleep with Noor nearby. His breathing matched the gentle rhythm of another heartbeat. He felt calm. He felt complete in a simple way. In saving them, he had found himself again. Not the man he used to be, but the man he still was.